A phone call that seemed routine from the hospital. Or was it a carefully planned trap? A pregnant woman walks into what she believes is a clinic to sign an insurance form, but moments later, she's tied to a chair in a cold, deserted warehouse by her millionaire husband and his ruthless mistress. They think she's just a weak victim, but they have no idea her father, a former FBI agent, is tracking every heartbeat through the special bracelet he once gave her. And when that signal falters, hell itself is about to break loose. This is a story of betrayal, power, and justice, reborn in a single defining moment. Stay with us until the very end. Tell us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Rain blurred the outline of the trees, falling in thin silver lines across the windshield. The wipers dragged back and forth, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Amelia Reed sat behind the wheel, her fingers gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Her phone still displayed the last message from the hospital. Urgent. Insurance confirmation needed tonight. Please visit the old storage branch before midnight. The voice on the call had sounded calm, professional, female. There had been no reason to doubt it. She parked beside a half-collapsed warehouse, its corrugated walls streaked with rust. A single light flickered above the doorway, swinging with the wind. She pressed her coat against her chest, stepped out, and called softly, "Hello? I'm here from Street Helena's hospital. I was told to sign some papers." Her voice disappeared into the hollow air. No one answered. Inside, the smell of mold and old paint hit her. Water dripped from somewhere unseen. The faint hum of a radio played a classical tune, but it was distorted, the melody bending in and out of static. She walked slowly down the corridor, one hand resting on her belly, feeling the small flutter that always reminded her she was not alone. "It will be quick," she whispered to her unborn child. "We'll be home soon." A table stood in the center of the room. On it lay a stack of papers and a pen. She stepped closer, brows furrowed. The logo at the top was wrong. Not the hospital's crest, but the emblem of her husband's company. Her throat tightened. The wind outside howled through a broken window, pushing the door shut behind her. The sound made her flinch. Footsteps echoed. A woman's laughter followed, low, mocking. Out of the shadows stepped Cassandra Moore, her husband's assistant, or rather, his mistress. Her red dress clung to her frame, a cruel flash of color against the gray walls. "You came alone," she said, smiling as if greeting a guest. "That makes things easier." Amelia froze. "Where is the hospital representative?" Cassandra tilted her head, the smile widening. "You're looking at her." The air shifted, heavy and cold. Before Amelia could move, a shadow appeared behind her. A man's hand slammed the door shut. The lock clicked. She turned and saw him, Richard Hale, her husband. His coat was soaked, his eyes sharp with something she hadn't seen before. Not anger, but certainty. "Richard," she breathed, her voice breaking. "What is this place? Why are you here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled off his gloves and tossed them onto the table. "Sit down." Cassandra picked up a coil of rope from the floor, its fibers stiff and dirty. "She won't cooperate if you ask nicely," she murmured. Amelia backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. "You tricked me. You called pretending to be the hospital." Cassandra laughed softly. "You always were too trusting." She stepped forward, eyes glittering. "Sign the papers, and you can go home. Refuse, and things get unpleasant." Amelia shook her head. "I won't. Not until you tell me what this is." Richard's voice cut through the air, flat and precise. "It's a property transfer. You're giving me full control. After that, you'll have your freedom." "My freedom?" she whispered. "You're talking about me like a business deal." He didn't flinch. "Everything is a deal." Cassandra moved faster than Amelia expected. She grabbed her arm and pushed her toward the chair. The wood scraped loudly against the floor. Amelia struggled, but the rope circled her wrists, biting into her skin. "Stop! You're hurting me!" she cried. "That's the point," Cassandra hissed. Her perfume was too sweet, almost nauseating in the damp air. Richard stood motionless, watching as the ropes tightened. He looked detached, as if this had nothing to do with him. Amelia's tears blurred her vision. "Why are you letting her do this?" she pleaded. "I'm pregnant, Richard. Our baby." He cut her off. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The radio crackled again, louder now, distorting the violin into shrill noise. A gust of wind slammed against the shutters, and dust rained down. Cassandra knelt, tying the final knot, then stepped back to admire her work. There, comfortable? Amelia could barely breathe. The ropes pressed against her belly each time she tried to move. "Please, you don't have to do this." Cassandra smirked. "Oh, I think we do. He needs peace. You've been such a burden." "Peace?" Amelia's voice trembled. "By destroying me?" Richard turned away, as if her words were nothing but noise. He stared out through the slits in the wooden boards, watching the rain lash the glassless windows. His reflection looked like a stranger's, tired, hollow, and unreachable. Minutes stretched. The only sounds were the drip of water and Amelia's uneven breathing. She tried to loosen the knots, but every movement made the ropes burn deeper into her wrists. Blood smeared across the coarse fiber. In the far corner, Cassandra lit a candle, its small flame trembling. The light revealed the shape of a camera tripod near the wall. Its red indicator blinked once, then again, recording. Amelia's chest tightened. "Why are you filming this?" Cassandra's grin widened. "Proof. Just in case you ever forget who's in control." Richard didn't tell her to stop. He simply adjusted his cufflinks, the faint glint of gold catching the candlelight. Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks. "How can you both do this? You used to love me." He exhaled slowly. "You should have learned when to stay quiet." Outside, thunder cracked. The lights flickered, shadows slicing across the walls. The camera light blinked steadily, capturing every tremor, every tear. Amelia's breathing grew shallow, her mind spinning between terror and disbelief. The wind outside shifted, carrying the faint sound of an engine somewhere beyond the trees. She couldn't see it, but the low hum reached her ears like a promise or a warning. Cassandra didn't notice. Richard didn't either. For a moment, everything stilled. The rain paused, the candle flame straightened, and even the radio went silent. Amelia lifted her head, straining to listen. The sound of tires rolling over wet gravel grew louder. Her pulse quickened. Somewhere beyond the iron door, a car slowed to a stop. The last thing she saw before the lights flickered again was the red blink of the camera reflected in her tears. Then came the silence before the next knock. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, swallowed by the rain. Inside the warehouse, the air felt thick, damp, almost unbreathable. Amelia's head hung low, her cheek resting against her shoulder. The rope dug into her wrists, cutting small grooves into her skin. Every pulse of her heartbeat sent a sharp sting through her hands. The candle Cassandra had lit earlier trembled on the metal table, its flame shrinking and stretching as the wind slipped through cracks in the wall. Amelia's breathing came shallow, uneven. The weight of her body pressed against the chair, but she couldn't move. Her legs were numb. Her neck ached from the force with which she had been shoved down. In her stomach, a faint flutter reminded her of the tiny heartbeat inside her, stubborn and fragile. She swallowed hard, whispering to herself, "It's okay. You'll be okay. Mommy's here." The words barely left her lips. Water dripped from the ceiling onto the concrete floor, one drop at a time. Each sound echoed like a metronome, marking her helplessness. Her eyes stung, tears mixed with sweat, blurring her vision. The single light bulb above her buzzed, then flickered, washing the room in alternating moments of light and shadow. In those flashes she saw fragments of her world. The pile of papers, the red dress, the camera's steady red light, blinking in the corner. Cassandra paced slowly, the sharp click of her heels slicing through the quiet. "You see," she said softly, as if explaining a simple truth, "this is how power feels. It's silent. It doesn't need to scream." She crouched down beside Amelia, her perfume thick with honey and venom. "You thought love made you safe. That's where you were wrong." Amelia's lips trembled. "What do you want from me?" Cassandra smiled. "Nothing you haven't already given him. We just want you to sign, that's all." The rope creaked as Amelia tried to shift. "Please, my wrists, they're bleeding." That's not my problem." Cassandra stood and turned her back. The hem of her red dress swayed gently as she walked toward the table. From the far side of the room, the radio played faintly again. A man's voice drifted through static, reading the weather forecast. Heavy rain, flash flood warning in effect for the northern districts. The words felt distant, unreal. Somewhere beyond these walls, the world kept moving. Amelia's throat tightened. The metallic taste of fear filled her mouth. She could smell rust, wet rope, and the faint scent of her own blood. She closed her eyes, letting memories slip in. The hospital corridor, the white flowers her father brought her after her first ultrasound, the sound of the baby's heartbeat on the monitor. It had been steady then, strong. The thought of it now, of that tiny rhythm slowing because of her terror, made her chest constrict. A sudden noise startled her. Cassandra had knocked something off the table. The candle wobbled, its flame nearly dying before recovering. She muttered under her breath, irritated. "Clumsy," she said, then laughed quietly. "You make me nervous, you know that? Just sitting there, staring with those eyes." Amelia's voice cracked. "You don't have to do this." Cassandra turned, her face half hidden in shadow. "Do what? Teach you a lesson?" There was a long silence, the kind that bends time. Amelia's body trembled. She could hear her own heartbeat, heavy and uneven. Her vision began to darken at the edges, a dull haze creeping in. She forced her mind to stay awake. "Think," she told herself silently. "Stay here, don't let them win." She pulled against the ropes again. Pain shot through her arms. The fibers scraped the skin raw, but one strand near her thumb loosened slightly. It wasn't enough, not yet. Still, she felt a flicker of control return, a single thread in a sea of despair. Her breath came slower now. The air felt colder. She could see her own reflection faintly on the wet floor, a distorted figure slumped in the chair, unrecognizable. "Is this me?" she thought. "Is this how it ends?" A gust of wind forced open a narrow crack in the wall. Raindrops sprayed through, landing on her face. The chill woke her for a moment, grounding her. She bit her lip to stay conscious. The taste of salt and iron filled her mouth. Cassandra's laughter drifted through the dimness again. She had found amusement in watching Amelia's struggle. "Still pretending you're brave," she teased. "You look pathetic." Amelia didn't answer. She couldn't waste her breath. She focused on the faint motion of her chest rising and falling, counting each breath like a lifeline. The ropes cut deeper. Her fingers tingled, almost numb. The baby moved again, a light tremor under her palm. That small movement kept her sane. She whispered to it, her words barely audible. "Stay with me, please stay." The candle sputtered again, its flame nearly gone. Shadows shifted across Cassandra's face, making her look almost monstrous. Her smile was wrong, too wide, too calm. "You know what I like about nights like this?" she said. "No one can hear a thing." Amelia's tears fell silently. Her chest rose in small, sharp gasps. She wanted to scream, but fear had stolen her voice. Then, without warning, the radio cut off. The sudden absence of sound made the space feel enormous. The dripping stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Cassandra turned toward the door, frowning. "Did you hear that?" she asked softly, as if speaking to the darkness itself. Amelia didn't reply. She sat perfectly still, her eyes half open, her breathing shallow. The silence pressed down on her like weight. Her mind floated somewhere between waking and sleep. For a heartbeat, it felt as if the entire world was waiting. The candle's flame steadied, small but persistent. Its light shimmered over the wet floor, over the blood on her wrists, over the ropes that held her. Amelia's gaze followed that fragile flame until her eyes blurred again. The faint warmth of it, flickering through the cold, felt like the last remaining proof that she was still alive. And somewhere outside, beneath the noise of rain, an engine roared once more. But inside the house, no one moved. Only silence remained, thick and endless. Richard had been standing there since the beginning, silent as the walls that surrounded them. The light from the candle carved lines across his face, highlighting the calmness that made Amelia's fear worse. He was not shocked. He was not horrified. He was simply there, watching, as though what Cassandra had done was an ordinary business transaction. Amelia lifted her head, her voice trembling. "Richard, please say something. Please stop this." He finally moved, slow and measured, removing his wet coat and folding it neatly over a chair. The gesture was precise, habitual, the way he used to prepare documents before a board meeting. "You've said enough already," he replied. His voice was low, almost polite. "You've always had a way of turning simple problems into melodrama." She blinked at him, her tears catching the light. "Melodrama? You let her tie me up. You let this happen." Richard's expression didn't change. You shouldn't have come here without understanding what it meant. You forced my hand. Cassandra smiled faintly, leaning against the wall. She still doesn't understand you, Richard. She never did. Amelia turned toward the other woman, her voice shaking. You called me pretending to be the hospital. You tricked me. Cassandra's laughter was soft and cruel. Oh, sweetheart, you were eager to believe. You always were. Richard's sigh broke through the sound of dripping water. Stop it, Cassandra. He turned his eyes back to Amelia. You see? Even now you make everyone around you emotional. You drain the room. Amelia's chest rose sharply. I drained the room? I gave up everything for you. My work, my friends, my name. All I ever asked was honesty. His reply came fast, almost mechanical. Honesty? You hide behind weakness. You use pity as a weapon. When people feel sorry for you, they take your side. I won't let you do that to me again. The candle trembled. The rope scratched against the chair as Amelia shifted, trying to keep the circulation in her hands. Her wrists were already raw, a thin thread of blood running along her skin. Richard, she whispered, this isn't you. Look at me. You loved me once. He did look at her then, but only for a heartbeat. There was no recognition, only exhaustion. People outgrow illusions, he said. You were a chapter that ended. You. Cassandra walked closer, the sharp tap of her heels cutting through the stillness. He doesn't have to defend himself, you know, she said, almost tenderly. You were holding him back. Amelia's voice cracked. Holding him back? From what? From decency? Cassandra knelt beside her, eyes glittering with amusement. From freedom, from all the things you made him give up because of you. The perfect little wife who turned into an anchor. Enough, Richard said quietly, but he didn't move to stop her. He ran a hand through his hair, the motion restless. This conversation isn't helping. Amelia stared at him, disbelief flooding her voice. Helping? You talk like this is some meeting you can adjourn. I'm your wife. I'm pregnant. You can't treat me like a problem to solve. He hesitated only a moment. You always use that word, pregnant, like it absolves you. Her breath caught. Absolves me? You mean from your cruelty? From the way you've changed? He didn't blink. From your mistakes, from your lies, from pretending this child fixes what's broken. Cassandra straightened, smiling at the cruelty she didn't have to invent. You see, Amelia? He's finally honest. You wanted honesty. Here it is. Amelia's tears fell quietly. Her voice trembled but didn't break. You don't mean that. You can't. You know this baby is yours. Richard's reply was colder than the rain outside. Do I? I'm not sure of anything anymore. The words hit her harder than the ropes. She shook her head slowly. Disbelief painted across her face. You're lying to yourself. You're saying what she wants you to say. Cassandra's hand brushed his shoulder, possessive and practiced. He doesn't need my words. He's just finally free to speak his own. Amelia's gaze darted between them, searching for any trace of the man she once knew. Richard, she whispered, this isn't freedom. This is hate wearing a mask. He didn't answer. The silence that followed was long, filled only by the soft hiss of wind slipping through the cracks. His eyes drifted to the papers on the table, the legal forms already prepared, the pen glinting beside them. Sign the transfer, he said. You'll have peace. We all will. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Peace. The word echoed inside her head until it lost its meaning. She looked down at her hands, red and trembling. Peace? She repeated. You call this peace? Richard's tone hardened. It's the only way out of this misery. Cassandra laughed quietly. He's right. Let go gracefully. It's the least you can do. Amelia raised her head, a faint strength flickering in her eyes. Gracefully. You want me to vanish quietly so you can play saints in public. But you forget, Richard. There's still a life inside me. Yours or not, I'll protect it. Hey. For a second, something cracked in his expression, a flicker of guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You always say dramatic things when cornered. It's exhausting. Amelia's voice dropped to a whisper. And you always run when you're afraid. The words hit a nerve. His jaw tightened, and he turned away, staring at the camera's red light blinking in the corner. Stop talking, he said, but she didn't. You used to fight for what was right. You used to love. Now you just watch. Him. Cassandra rolled her eyes. Enough of this performance. She's making herself the martyr again. Richard looked down, rubbing his temples, as if her pain were a sound he could turn off. "You'll sign," he murmured, not looking at her. "You always give in eventually." Amelia felt the air thin around her. The baby moved faintly beneath her palm, and she closed her eyes, holding on to that small proof of life. She didn't answer him. She didn't plead. The candle flickered once, then steadied. The shadows on the walls stopped shifting. Cassandra smiled in satisfaction. Richard's breathing slowed, even detached. No one spoke again. The rain outside pressed harder against the roof, a steady rhythm that matched the pulse in Amelia's ears. And in that heavy silence, the warehouse seemed to listen. The candle's flame wavered as Cassandra reached for the phone resting on the table. Its reflective screen glimmered like a small pool of firelight, casting sharp lines across her face. She tilted her head, her lips curving into a slow, deliberate smile. "Do you want to know what I think, Amelia?" Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was venom underneath it. "I think this little tragedy deserves an audience." She tapped the record button. The small red circle blinked alive. "Smile for the camera," she whispered. Amelia flinched, turning her face away. "Turn that off," she said, her voice faint but firm. Cassandra crouched in front of her, eyes level with Amelia's. "Why? You should be proud. Every story needs a villain, doesn't it? We'll let the world decide who that is." Amelia's breath caught. "You're insane." Cassandra laughed quietly, the sound echoing against the damp walls. "Oh, I'm sane enough. You just can't understand what it's like to finally win." She panned the camera upward, slowly, lingering on Amelia's face, the ropes, the blood at her wrists. Then she turned the lens toward herself, capturing the red of her dress, the gleam of her eyes. "See? Contrast, weakness and strength, tragedy and beauty." Richard watched from behind her, his arms crossed, his silence a shield. He didn't tell her to stop. He didn't even look away. "Richard," Amelia whispered, "tell her this isn't you. Tell her to stop." He exhaled, the sound flat. "She's not doing anything wrong. She's showing you the truth." Cassandra smiled at that, standing and circling Amelia like a cat studying its prey. "He's finally learning," she said. "He used to defend you. He thought you were fragile. But you're just noise, aren't you?" The light flickered again, revealing the room in fragments. The ropes around Amelia's wrists, the water pooling near the wall, the papers on the table that no longer looked like contracts but confessions. Amelia's tears fell, tracing thin lines through the dust on her cheeks. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I can," Cassandra said simply. She stepped closer, holding the phone inches from Amelia's face. "Look at yourself. This is what you reduced him to. You made him choose between pity and power. Guess which one lasts longer?" Amelia kept her eyes fixed on the candle instead of the camera. "You think power lasts?" she said quietly. "It rots. It always does." Cassandra's smile faltered for a heartbeat, then sharpened again. "We'll see." She turned the camera back toward Richard. "Say something," she told him. He hesitated. The pause was heavy, the air thick with everything unsaid. Finally he spoke, his voice detached. "I only wanted peace, but she wouldn't let me have it." Cassandra nodded, pleased. "Good. Keep talking. Let her hear it from you." Amelia closed her eyes. The sound of his voice, once familiar, once safe, now felt foreign, like a stranger's confession in the dark. She wanted to scream, to tear through the ropes, to make him remember who he had been. But the ropes held, and silence wrapped tighter around her throat. Cassandra moved behind her, her footsteps soft against the floor. She placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder, fingers cold and deliberate. "You should thank me, really. You're the center of attention for the first time in your life." Attention?" Amelia's voice broke into a whisper. "You call this attention?" Cassandra leaned close enough for her breath to brush Amelia's ear. "You'll be a story tomorrow. Maybe even a warning." Amelia turned her head slightly, meeting her eyes. "You'll be a memory. That's all." The smile on Cassandra's lips vanished for a moment. Then she laughed again, louder this time. "You're brave now? How sweet." She reached down and tightened the ropes herself, watching Amelia wince. Every queen loses her crown eventually. I'm just helping you take it off. Richard's voice came from the shadows. Enough, Cassandra. She didn't stop. You had your chance to speak earlier. Now let me finish what you started. Amelia's body trembled, but she refused to look away. You can hurt me, but you can't make me disappear. Oh, I can, Cassandra said. One signature, and you'll disappear from every record, every account, every life that mattered. Isn't that right, Richard? He said nothing. His silence was the final confirmation. Cassandra turned the camera on herself again, her face glowing in the dim light. He's mine now, she said softly. And you, she pointed the lens at Amelia, you're yesterday's problem. The words fell into the air like glass shattering. Amelia's breathing grew shallow. She felt the room tilt, her pulse thudding against the ropes. Every sound became distant. The rain, the radio, Cassandra's laughter. Only one thought remained clear, the child inside her. She pressed her hands against her belly, whispering under her breath, I'm still here. Cassandra lowered the phone for a moment, watching her with something between irritation and fascination. You never learn, she said. Still trying to make it about love. It's pathetic. Amelia didn't answer. The candlelight danced across her eyes, revealing something deeper than pain. A quiet defiance, small but alive. Cassandra stepped back, brushing imaginary dust off her dress. Smile, she said again, lifting the phone. Let's get one last shot of the broken wife. Amelia raised her chin. Make sure you get the part where you look afraid, she said. The camera shook slightly in Cassandra's hand. Her smirk returned, brittle now. Afraid? Of what? Amelia met her gaze. Of what happens when this isn't enough for you? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The candle flame leaned sideways, throwing their faces into a sharp divide of light and shadow. The red light of the camera blinked steadily between them, recording every second, every breath. Cassandra's voice dropped to a whisper. Keep talking, you'll regret it. Amelia's voice stayed calm. You already do. The air thickened again, dense with unspoken fury. The only sound was the rain hammering against the roof, the rhythm growing harder, faster, like an echo of something inevitable. Cassandra set the phone down, her movements stiff. She straightened her dress, adjusted her hair, and looked at Richard with a false sweetness. Your turn, she said. She's wasting our time. Richard nodded once, his expression unreadable. He picked up the pen from the table, tapping it lightly against the papers. The sound echoed faintly through the warehouse, rhythmic, final. Amelia didn't move, her breathing steadied, her eyes unblinking. The candle sputtered, sending a thin thread of smoke upward before stabilizing again. The pen stopped tapping. The silence that followed felt heavier than any word that could have been spoken. The pen that had been tapping stopped. The sound of rain filled the empty space it left behind. Richard stood still for a long moment, his hand resting on the papers spread across the table. The candlelight bent toward him, painting a golden line across his cheekbone and the hard set of his jaw. He looked like a man about to close a deal, not one standing over the woman he had once promised to protect. Amelia's voice was barely more than a whisper. What are those papers? He didn't look at her. Documents that will simplify everything. You sign them, you walk away. We end this without scandal. Cassandra moved closer, her heels clicking like a metronome marking the pace of cruelty. He's being generous, she said, smoothing a hand over the corner of the top page. Most men wouldn't bother with paperwork. Amelia's chest tightened. You mean you want me to sign my life away? Richard finally met her eyes. I'm offering you freedom, money, privacy. You can start again somewhere else. But if you refuse, I'll make sure the world knows your instability, the screaming, the lies, the violence. The violence? Amelia laughed, a broken sound that caught in her throat. You mean the bruises you gave me? His expression didn't flicker. You'll only make yourself sound delusional. Who will believe you? My word against yours, and my word carries weight. Cassandra leaned in, whispering near his ear. She's trying to bait you. Don't waste your energy. He nodded once, his voice steady. Sign the transfer, Amelia. I won't, she said, her tone firm for the first time. Not to save your pride. The rope creaked as she shifted, pain lancing through her wrists. She didn't cry out. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Richard's fingers tightened around the pen. Do you think I won't do it without your consent? he asked quietly. "I've already prepared everything. The lawyers, the accounts, the statements. All I need is your signature to make it cleaner. Refuse, and I'll drag this through every channel I own." Her breath hitched. "You'd destroy me for money?" He gave a faint smile. "Not for money, for peace." Cassandra's laughter filled the space between them. "He's right, you know. You're chaos wrapped in silk. Beautiful, but exhausting." She moved behind Amelia, letting her nails drag lightly along the rope, not enough to break skin, just enough to make her flinch. "One little signature, and you'll never have to see us again." Amelia closed her eyes. The baby moved faintly beneath her palm. She felt the sharp sting of tears she refused to shed. "You're both cowards," she whispered. Cassandra frowned. "What did you say?" "I said you're cowards," Amelia repeated, louder now, her voice trembling but clear. "You need to trap me to feel powerful. You need to humiliate a pregnant woman to feel alive." Cassandra slapped her hard across the face. The sound cracked through the room. The candle flame jumped. "You don't get to talk to me like that." Richard didn't stop her. He just turned away. Amelia's cheek burned, but she didn't look down. She held Cassandra's gaze with quiet defiance. "You think this makes you strong?" she said softly. "You're wrong. Strong people don't need to prove it." Cassandra's nostrils flared. "You're pathetic. Then why are you afraid of me?" The words landed sharp as glass. Cassandra's hand froze midair, trembling slightly before she forced a laugh. "Afraid? Of you? Don't flatter yourself." Richard's voice cut through the tension. "Enough." He stepped forward and placed the pen on the table in front of her. "Sign it, now." Amelia's hands tightened into fists. "You can forge my name, you can falsify every record, but you can't erase what you've done. There will be proof. There's always proof." For a split second, something in Richard's expression faltered. His eyes darted toward the corner where the red light of the camera still blinked faintly. Then he turned away quickly, pretending not to notice. Cassandra didn't miss the glance. "She's bluffing," she said. "There's nothing." Amelia said nothing. She let their unease grow. The rain outside grew louder, beating against the windows like a drum. The candlelight quivered with each gust of wind sneaking through the cracks. Shadows danced across the walls, multiplying Cassandra's face into distorted reflections. Richard broke the silence. "Do you think anyone would care?" His tone was calm again, almost kind. "Even if someone found out, what would they do? People forget. Money buys silence." Amelia met his gaze. "Money doesn't buy peace, it just buys distance." He leaned closer, his breath cold against her skin. "Distance is all I need." Cassandra crossed her arms, watching him with a look that bordered on admiration. "You're wasting your time, Richard. Let her rot here for a few days. She'll sign eventually." Amelia stiffened, but she didn't look away. "If I die here," she said quietly, "someone will come for me." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "No one even knows you're here. You made sure of that when you left your phone behind." Amelia's voice was calm, almost eerie. "You sound very sure of yourself." Richard looked down at her one last time. "You used to understand how the world works. You've forgotten that people like me decide what happens." She swallowed hard. "And people like you always fall the same way." The silence that followed stretched, tense and fragile. Cassandra's laughter broke it, sharp and high-pitched. "You really should write poetry. Maybe it'll make your obituary sound more romantic." Amelia's hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. "You'll be remembered too, Cassandra, just not how you want." The candlelight flickered violently, then steadied. Richard slammed his fist against the table, the sound echoing through the warehouse. "Enough!" he shouted. The force made the document slide to the floor. A few pages fluttered near Amelia's feet. The echo faded. No one moved. Cassandra looked at him, startled, then smiled faintly. "Temper never solved anything," she murmured. He ignored her, breathing heavily. "Pick them up," he said to no one in particular, his tone empty. "We finish this now." Cassandra crouched, gathering the scattered papers, her hands trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. The pen rolled across the table, stopping near Amelia's chair. Amelia looked at it but didn't move. She couldn't. Her wrists were swollen, the ropes tight as iron. Richard straightened the stack of pages and slammed them back onto the table. "One signature," he said, voice low again. "One." Outside, thunder rolled over the roof. The light bulb flickered once, twice, casting their shadows long across the walls. No one spoke. The sound of rain became deafening. The candle guttered again, throwing a wave of darkness before catching its flame. In that single breath between flicker and light, the world seemed to hold itself still, waiting. The candlelight wavered again, and in its faint circle, Amelia could see the pen gleaming on the table like a weapon dressed as mercy. Richard stood over her, breathing hard, the muscles in his jaw flexing. Cassandra's hand lingered on his arm, coaxing, urging him to end it. The air between them was thick with the smell of dust and rain, with something darker beneath it, triumph and fear trying to wear the same face. "Sign it," Cassandra said softly, her voice smooth, persuasive. "You can barely sit upright. What's left to fight for?" Amelia didn't answer. Her wrists throbbed under the rope, her skin burning where blood had dried and cracked. The pain blurred at the edges now, replaced by a heavy stillness. She could feel the faint flutter inside her belly, a pulse within a pulse. It was the only thing keeping her anchored. Richard's voice came low, strained. "I gave you every chance to make this easy." He bent down, placing both hands on the table, his face close to hers. "You forced me to do this." Her voice came out raw. "Forced you? You tied me up." He turned his head slightly, refusing to meet her eyes. "You left me no choice." Cassandra's laughter broke the silence. "Oh, she's good," she said. "She makes monsters sound like victims." She picked up the phone again, turning the camera toward Amelia. "Maybe we should record this part. The signature scene. Every story needs its ending. "Stop it," Richard muttered. But there was no conviction in his tone. Cassandra ignored him. "You want to play strong, don't you?" she whispered to Amelia. "Let's see how long you can keep your head high when the world sees what you really are." The phone's light shone bright in Amelia's face. She turned away, blinking against it, her tears catching the reflection. The humiliation burned deeper than the pain in her wrists. Cassandra laughed again and lowered the phone to show her red dress in the screen's glow. "Look at me. I'm what he wants now." Amelia's voice cracked. "You're what's left when love dies." Cassandra's smile froze, and before Richard could react, she swung her hand hard across Amelia's face. The sound of the slap echoed through the warehouse. The candle trembled. Amelia's head jerked to the side, her cheek stinging, but she didn't cry. Richard turned, his voice sharp. "Enough, like." Cassandra didn't back down. "No, let her see what she's done. You think I don't know what she's been saying about us, about you?" She leaned in close to Amelia. "She wants to ruin you, Richard. She'll drag you down with her lies." Amelia spat out a whisper. "The only lies here are yours." Cassandra hit her again, harder this time. The candle almost went out. "Stop," Richard said again, louder. "That's enough." He grabbed Cassandra's wrist, pulling her back. Her eyes blazed. "You're defending her now?" she hissed. "After everything?" "I'm ending this," he snapped. But he didn't untie Amelia. He didn't kneel or reach for her. He simply took a step back, straightened his collar, and said quietly, "Get her to sign. Then we're done." Cassandra shook off his grip and grabbed the papers. She shoved the pen against Amelia's bound hand, pressing so hard that the metal tip left a mark on her skin. "Sign it," she ordered. "Sign it before I lose my patience." "No." Amelia stared at the pen, her vision blurred, her heartbeat too loud in her ears. The ink looked blacker than the shadows on the walls. She didn't move. "Sign it!" Cassandra shouted, the edge of her voice cracking. Amelia lifted her eyes, meeting hers. "No." Cassandra froze. The word hung in the air, small but solid. "No." For a moment, everything stopped. Then Cassandra shoved the chair, hard. It tipped backward, crashing to the floor. Amelia's head struck the ground, pain flashing white behind her eyes. The ropes bit deeper. Richard's voice came distant through the ringing in her ears. "Cassandra! She deserves it!" Cassandra snapped. "She wants to make a scene? Then let her have one." She raised her hand again, but this time Richard caught it. His voice was low but sharp as glass. "Enough!" Cassandra's chest heaved, her lipstick smeared. "You're weak," she spat. "You think pity will save you?" He didn't answer. He only looked down at Amelia, who lay half-curled on the floor, her breath shallow but steady. The sight of her bruised face made something flicker in him, guilt or anger, he couldn't tell. Cassandra noticed the look, her expression hardened. "Don't start feeling sorry for her now." He said nothing. He crouched down and lifted the chair upright again, dragging it closer to the table. Then he stood back, adjusting his cufflinks, as if tidying a mess in an office. "We finish this now," he said quietly. Cassandra's voice trembled. "She won't sign." "She will," he replied. "Everyone breaks eventually." Amelia lifted her head slowly, blood tracing a thin line along her temple. Her voice came soft, almost too soft to hear. "Not everyone." Richard stared at her for a long time, the words hanging between them like smoke. Then he turned away, unable to hold her gaze. Cassandra looked from one to the other, confusion creeping into her fury. "What now?" she demanded. No one answered. The camera's red light blinked again from the corner, the quiet witness to everything. Amelia saw it through the haze, and for the first time in hours, her heart steadied. Someone would see. Someone would know. Cassandra paced the floor, muttering under her breath. "You're ruining everything." Richard pressed his palms against the table, staring down at the scattered pages. "Enough talk. We're done." "Obide." He tore the top page in half, the sound sharp, deliberate. Then he turned to Amelia, his voice cold. "You brought this on yourself. Remember that." Amelia didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat felt raw, her body trembling with exhaustion. Cassandra moved behind her, gripping the back of the chair. "If you won't sign, then maybe you'll learn another way to obey." Amelia braced herself, but before Cassandra could move, a sound cut through the warehouse, the distant roar of an engine, faint but growing. Cassandra froze, her head snapping toward the door. "Did you hear that?" Richard frowned. "It's probably nothing," but the sound grew louder, closer, like thunder crawling over gravel. For the first time that night, Cassandra looked uneasy. "Someone's here." Richard turned toward the window, eyes narrowing. The rain had stopped. The silence outside was heavier than the storm. Amelia stayed still, her heartbeat quickening. She didn't speak, she didn't move, she just listened. The candle flickered one last time, its flame bending toward the sound outside. Then the light steadied again. The rumble outside grew louder. It rolled over the roof like a slow thunderstorm refusing to move on. Inside, the air felt charged, the kind of stillness that waits for a break. Cassandra stood frozen, one hand clutching the chair, her breath uneven. Richard moved toward the window, pushing aside the curtain of dust and rain streaks to peer into the darkness beyond. Amelia sat upright, her wrists still bound, her breath shallow but controlled. The sound had sparked something inside her, something she thought had died hours ago. Hope, fragile but fierce, began to stir beneath the pain. "What is it?" Cassandra whispered. "Nothing," Richard said sharply. "Probably a passing truck." But even he didn't sound convinced. Amelia lifted her head. Her voice was hoarse. "Maybe it's someone looking for me." Cassandra turned, her eyes flashing. "Don't start." "I told you," Amelia said quietly. "Someone would come." Cassandra crossed the room in 2 quick strides, her heels hitting the floor like gunshots. She grabbed Amelia's chin, forcing her to look up. "You think you can scare me with hope?" she hissed. "No one's coming for you." Amelia didn't flinch. "Then why are you trembling?" Cassandra's grip tightened for a moment before she let go, stepping back. The sound outside faded, replaced by the relentless rhythm of rain dripping from the eaves. Still, the echo of the engine seemed to hang in the air. Richard turned away from the window. "Enough games. Cassandra, we finish this tonight." She looked at him, her bravado already slipping. "You're sure it's nothing? Do you hear anything now?" he snapped. Amelia's voice broke through the argument, soft but cutting. "You'll both hear it soon enough." Richard glared at her. "Shut up." But she didn't. She leaned forward, the ropes scraping against her wrists, every movement a reminder of pain. "You think this will stay buried? It won't. You've recorded everything yourselves. You've left proof in every corner of this room." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "You really don't know when to quit." "I'm not quitting," Amelia said, her tone steady. "I'm surviving." Richard walked toward her, his shadow swallowing the candlelight. "You don't understand what surviving means." "Nesco." Her voice rose, trembling with both fear and fire. "It means not letting you define who I am. It means remembering that I'm more than what you've done to me." He reached out suddenly, gripping the arm of the chair, shaking it hard enough that it scraped against the floor. "You're nothing without me." Amelia met his eyes, unblinking. "Then why are you afraid?" His fingers loosened. For a moment, the only sound was his uneven breathing. Cassandra stepped closer, whispering, "She's trying to twist you. Ignore her." But Amelia saw it, the flicker of uncertainty, the thin crack in his mask. She pushed harder. "You talk about control, Richard. But you've lost it. Look at yourself. Look at her. You've built a cage and locked yourself inside it." He drew in a slow breath. "You should stop talking before I forget how to be merciful." Amelia tilted her head. "You already have." Cassandra's patience broke. She reached for the phone again, the recording still open. "Fine. Let's give her what she wants." Richard caught her wrist. "Enough," he said through clenched teeth. "No, not enough," Cassandra snapped. "She thinks she's safe because she's pregnant. She thinks that makes her untouchable." She turned to Amelia, eyes gleaming. "Tell me, does it hurt knowing he doesn't love you or your child?" Amelia's lips parted, but no sound came. Her whole body trembled, and still she held Cassandra's stare. "It hurts," she whispered. "But it won't break me." Cassandra laughed sharply. "You're already broken." Amelia's voice steadied. "Then why do you still need to prove it?" Cassandra's smile faltered. "You're pathetic." Amelia took a slow breath. "Maybe, but I'm not cruel." Richard ran a hand through his hair, his voice rising. "Enough of this! I'm tired of hearing both of you." Cassandra rounded on him. "You don't get to shout at me. You wanted this. You wanted her quiet. You just didn't have the stomach to finish it." "Stop," he warned. "Or what?" she sneered. "You'll defend her again?" He took a step toward her, his voice low. "Careful, Cassandra!" Amelia's eyes darted between them, her mind racing. The tension between them was a live wire, sparking in the dim light. She began twisting her wrists again, slow and deliberate, ignoring the sting of the rope cutting deeper. A small thread near her thumb loosened. Cassandra noticed the movement. "Don't even think about it." Amelia froze, meeting her gaze with defiance. "You can't stop me from thinking." Richard turned, the sound of the chair scraping against the floor pulling his attention back to her. "What are you doing?" She lifted her head. "Breathing." He frowned. "Don't get clever with me." But the crack was already there. His voice wavered, his control thinning. Cassandra muttered something under her breath and walked away, pacing near the door. She pressed her ear against the metal, listening. "I heard something again," she said. Richard sighed. "You're paranoid." "No," she insisted. "It was there. A car, or maybe footsteps." The faint sound returned, a distant echo, soft but steady. Amelia heard it too. Her pulse quickened. Cassandra turned to Richard. "See?" He stared toward the door, frowning. "Probably the wind." "Yep." Amelia's lips curved into a fragile smile. "The wind doesn't walk." Cassandra spun toward her. "Shut up!" But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She moved back to the table, grabbing the papers and the pen. "End this now, Richard. She's making me nervous." He didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. The sound outside grew clearer. The crunch of gravel under tires, the low hum of an engine idling close. Cassandra's voice cracked. "Richard, what if it's—" "Stop talking," he snapped. Amelia straightened in her chair, her heartbeat racing. "I told you," she said softly, "someone would come." Cassandra lunged forward and slapped her again, hard. "You don't get to talk about hope." Amelia's head snapped to the side, but this time she didn't cry. She turned back slowly, her eyes steady. "Hope doesn't need permission." Cassandra froze, her hand trembling. The roar of the engine grew louder, headlights flashing briefly through the cracks in the boarded windows. A sudden beam of light cut across the floor, sweeping over the three of them before vanishing again. Richard's face drained of color. "Who the hell is that?" No one answered. Cassandra backed away from the door, clutching the edge of the table. Amelia's chest rose and fell, her breathing sharp and fast. The light flashed once more, stronger this time, and in that split second of brightness, Amelia's eyes gleamed, not with fear, but with something fiercer. Then the light vanished, and the warehouse fell silent again, holding its breath for what came next. The headlights burst through the cracks again, brighter this time, slicing the darkness into fragments. Cassandra froze mid-step, her breath catching in her throat. The engine outside roared, then stopped. A door slammed. Silence followed, thick and absolute, broken only by the sound of dripping rain from the roof. Richard's eyes flicked toward the entrance. "Who is that?" His voice, once so steady, trembled slightly. Cassandra shook her head. "You said no one would come here." "Wait." He moved to the door, hand hovering over the handle, listening. No footsteps, no voices, only wind sweeping through the empty yard. "Stay here," he muttered, but his words carried more fear than command. Amelia's breathing grew shallow. Her wrists ached from struggling, but she felt it again, the faint pulse of her child, the spark of life, reminding her that she was still here, still fighting. She whispered, "Dad." Cassandra snapped around. "What did you say?" Amelia's eyes lifted, steady and calm. "I said, you should have left when you had the chance," Cassandra scoffed, masking her unease with mockery. "Empty threats from someone who can't even stand." Richard opened the door a few inches, peering into the rain-soaked night. The air smelled of mud and gasoline. He couldn't see anything, but he sensed movement, subtle and deliberate, like a predator stalking from the dark. "It's nothing," he said, though his tone betrayed doubt. "Probably a stray car on the main road." Then came the crunch of boots on gravel, slow, heavy, controlled. Richard's hand froze on the door. Cassandra took a step back. "That's not a car," she whispered. The sound grew closer. One step, then another, then a voice, calm, low, firm. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Step away from the woman." The words struck the air like lightning. Cassandra gasped. "What?" The door swung open, hitting the wall with a crash. Rain and wind swept in, scattering dust and candlelight. A man stood at the threshold, tall, broad-shouldered, his face half-shadowed beneath the flicker of blue and red lights flashing from outside. He raised a badge in one hand, a gun in the other. "Thomas Reed, former FBI. Drop whatever's in your hands and move back." Amelia's eyes widened. "Dad." For a second, everything stopped. Richard's face went pale. Cassandra's lips parted, but no words came. The gun's barrel glinted under the stuttering light. "Step away from her," Thomas said again, his tone colder now. "Do it slowly." Richard raised his hands slightly. "Thomas, listen. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like." His voice didn't rise, but it carried power, the kind that made the air itself tighten. "I've been tracking that signal for hours. You made this easy for me." Cassandra shook her head, panic creeping into her features. "He's lying. He doesn't know anything." Thomas's eyes shifted to her, hard as steel. "The phone call, the forged message, the insurance papers. You think I don't know your voice? You left traces in every system you touched." Cassandra stumbled back, her confidence shattering. "You can't prove that." "I don't need to," Thomas said, stepping fully into the room. "It's all recorded. The call, the GPS data, the sound of my daughter screaming. I heard every second." Amelia's chest tightened, her voice trembling. "You heard me?" "I did." He glanced at her, his expression softening for a fraction of a second. "And I'm sorry I wasn't faster." Richard took a small step toward the table, his eyes flicking to the papers, to the gun, then to the door. "Thomas," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "You're overreacting. We were just—" Thomas's gun rose an inch higher. "You were just what? Negotiating? That's what you call kidnapping a pregnant woman?" Richard swallowed hard. "You don't understand. She's unstable. She came here on her own." Thomas's tone stayed even. "Save it for the report. Now back away." Cassandra moved suddenly, lunging toward the phone on the table. The sound of the gun's safety clicking off froze her mid-motion. "Don't," Thomas warned. "Put it down." Her hand hovered in the air, trembling. She set the phone back slowly. Amelia's tears spilled silently as Thomas crossed the room. He reached her, his movements precise, trained. With one swift motion, he cut the ropes binding her wrists. Her arms dropped free, her skin raw and red where the fibers had bitten deep. She gasped, the air burning her lungs as she lifted her hands to her belly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, crouching beside her. She shook her head, unable to speak. The words wouldn't form, caught between relief and disbelief. "You found me," she whispered. "I promised I would," he said softly. Behind them, Cassandra's voice cracked. "You think this changes anything? You have no jurisdiction. You're retired." Thomas turned, eyes like ice. Retired doesn't mean unarmed. Richard tried to speak again, his voice faltering. Thomas, please. You're making a mistake. She's… Quiet. The command hit like a slap. Thomas reached into his coat, pulling out a small device, the size of a coin, silver with a faint red light blinking on its surface. He held it up between two fingers. You see this? This is what you didn't notice. The GPS embedded in her bracelet. You thought you were clever, but you were sloppy. Cassandra's face went pale. That's impossible. It's reality, Thomas said. And every second of this nightmare is already transmitted. The blue and red lights outside grew brighter, flashing through the cracks in the boarded windows. The sound of tires skidding on gravel followed, cars stopping, doors slamming, voices shouting orders. Richard's composure cracked. You called the police? Thomas didn't answer. He lowered his gun slightly but didn't take his eyes off them. You should pray they get here before I forget how to be calm. Cassandra's back hit the wall. She looked around frantically for an escape. Richard, do something. He didn't move. His face had drained of all color, his breathing uneven. This wasn't supposed to happen, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Thomas turned back to Amelia. You're safe now, he said quietly. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of his coat. You came. I never stopped looking. His voice broke just for a moment. Outside, footsteps pounded closer. The faint crackle of radios filled the air, followed by the sharp bark of orders. Police! Drop your weapons! Thomas exhaled. Finally, Cassandra whimpered. You'll regret this, she said. You think you're saving her, but you're destroying everything. Thomas met her gaze. No, I'm restoring what you tried to destroy. The first police flashlight cut through the doorway, filling the room with harsh white light. Officers poured in, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them, one shouted. Richard raised his hands, his voice shaking. This is a misunderstanding. Tell it to the court, Thomas said quietly. The light from the police cars painted the walls blue and red, the colors reflecting off the wet floor like fractured glass. Amelia sat still, her father's hand on her shoulder, the chaos swirling around them fading into a dull hum. Her tears came again, but this time they weren't from fear. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, washing the dirt from the steps. Thomas looked at her and said softly, It's over. But in her heart, Amelia knew it wasn't. Not yet. The truth was just beginning to breathe. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper, polish, and rain. Outside, the city still echoed with last night's storm. But here inside, the air was still heavy with anticipation. Rows of spectators filled the benches, their murmurs like a low tide receding as the judge entered. Reporters stood near the back, pens poised, cameras ready, their lenses trained on the two figures seated at the defendant's table. Richard Hale and Cassandra Moore sat side by side, though they no longer looked at each other. The distance between them was small but felt endless. His suit was immaculate, pressed and dark, but his face was drawn, eyes hollow. Cassandra's red dress had been replaced by the gray of prison fabric, her hair pulled back tightly, a poor attempt at dignity. Neither spoke. Neither had anything left to say. Across the room, Amelia sat beside her father. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers entwined with quiet strength. The faint scar on her wrist caught the light each time she moved. She didn't look at Richard. She didn't need to. Every truth that mattered was already written in the evidence stacked on the prosecutor's table. The clerk called the session to order. The gavel struck once. Case number 4127. The State versus Richard Hale and Cassandra Moore. The prosecutor rose, his voice calm and precise. Your Honor, today we conclude a case that began not with a business dispute, but with cruelty. We present evidence of kidnapping, assault, and coercion against a pregnant woman. The motive was greed. The method was fear. The outcome speaks for itself. He turned slightly, gesturing to the screen beside him. The first frame appeared. A dimly lit warehouse, a flickering candle, a woman bound to a chair. Amelia looked away, her chest tightening. The video had been recovered from the phone Cassandra used to film her humiliation. The prosecutor's voice continued. This footage, combined with the GPS data from a medical tracking bracelet, establishes beyond doubt that the defendants planned and executed the abduction. You will hear their voices, You will see their actions, and you will understand why justice must speak loudly today." A murmur rippled through the courtroom as the audio played. Richard's voice filled the space, detached and calm. "Sign the papers." Cassandra's laughter followed, sharp, cold, echoing like a memory that refused to fade. Across the room, the defense attorney shifted uneasily. When the recording ended, the silence felt heavier than any sound before it. Thomas Reed stood from his seat in the gallery when called as the next witness. His posture was straight, his voice steady. "I tracked her location through the GPS system I installed myself," he said. "When the signal spiked, I knew she was in danger. What I found confirmed everything." The prosecutor nodded. "Mr. Reed, were you the one who discovered the defendants at the scene?" "Yes. I arrived minutes before the police. They were attempting to force my daughter to sign legal documents transferring her assets. She was restrained. They were armed." Richard shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. Thomas's gaze hardened. "I have seen crime scenes for most of my career. I thought I had learned to control what I felt. But when I saw my daughter tied to a chair, her face bruised, her hands bleeding." His voice faltered, but he regained composure. "I realized there is no training for that." The judge nodded quietly, allowing a pause. The tension in the room pressed like air before thunder. The prosecutor spoke again. "Your Honor, we ask for the maximum penalty under federal law. This was not a moment of weakness. It was premeditated cruelty. They recorded it for their own satisfaction. They believed money and power could erase what they did. But law is not so easily bought." Richard's lawyer stood, attempting composure. "My client regrets his actions deeply. He was under emotional strain. His relationship with the victim had been volatile." The judge raised a hand. "Regret after exposure is not repentance." Cassandra's lawyer tried next. "Miss Moore was manipulated by Mr. Hale. She was not in control." Cassandra slammed her palm on the table. "That's a lie," she blurted. Her voice cracked through the silence. "He didn't force me. I did it because I wanted to. I wanted her gone." Gasps spread across the room. Richard turned, staring at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You just ruined us," he hissed under his breath. Cassandra laughed bitterly. "You ruined yourself." The judge's gavel struck again. "Order in the court." "Huh?" When calm returned, the judge looked from one defendant to the other. His voice was firm but not loud. "Richard Hale and Cassandra Moore, the evidence presented leaves no doubt of your guilt. You planned the abduction, carried it out, and inflicted physical and psychological harm on a woman carrying a child. The court sentences you both to 30 years in federal prison." The words landed like the final nail in a coffin. Cassandra's head dropped, Richard's shoulders slumped. The gavel struck once more. The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Flashbulbs burst from the back as journalists surged forward. Justice delivered. 30 years for Millionaire and Mistress flashed on the digital news ticker above the courthouse doors within minutes. Amelia didn't move. She sat very still, her fingers tightening around the small silver bracelet on her wrist, the same one that had guided her father to her. Thomas placed a hand gently over hers. "It's over," he said quietly. She turned to him, her eyes full of something between gratitude and grief. "Justice isn't revenge, is it?" He shook his head. "No. Justice is protection." Across the room, Richard was being led away in handcuffs. His face was blank, his eyes unfocused. Cassandra followed, muttering to herself, her voice small and wild. Neither of them looked back. The judge rose, signaling adjournment. The crowd began to disperse, their voices a mix of sympathy, satisfaction, and shock. Amelia stood slowly, her knees weak. She looked around the courtroom, the benches, the flags, the seal of the court, all symbols of a system she had once doubted but now understood. It was not perfect, it was human, but it had spoken for her when she could not. Outside the windows, rain had stopped. The clouds broke apart, letting in pale light that caught on the marble floor. The reflection shimmered, like water washing away the dust of everything that had come before. Thomas guided her toward the exit. Reporters turned, cameras flashing. One shouted a question, but Thomas raised his hand, shielding her from the noise. "No comments today," he said firmly. They stepped into the hallway, where the air felt lighter. The echoes of the verdict still lingered in Amelia's ears, blending with the soft hum of footsteps and distant voices. The law had spoken, she thought, her hand resting over her belly, and for the first time in months, silence meant peace. Morning light poured through the high windows of the courthouse like a quiet benediction. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint echo of the verdict that had settled here just a day before. Outside, the city was waking up, traffic moving in slow waves, people crossing streets without knowing that justice had taken shape within these walls only hours ago. Amelia stood at the top of the courthouse steps, her coat drawn close around her. The pale sun touched her face, soft and warm against the faint bruises that remained, faint reminders of where she had been. The silver bracelet on her wrist glinted when she moved her hand to shield her eyes. It caught the light like a small heartbeat. Below, reporters lingered, their voices hushed, cameras resting idle for once. They had what they wanted already: the image of the millionaire in handcuffs, the mistress hiding her face, the hero father who had defied time and fear to bring his daughter home. But this moment was not for headlines, it was for silence. Thomas stood a few steps behind her, watching quietly. His face carried lines deeper than age, carved by sleepless nights and the weight of memory. "You should sit," he said softly. "You've been standing here too long." She turned slightly, smiling faintly. "I just need a little more time to breathe." He nodded, stepping beside her. "You did well in there. You faced them." Amelia looked toward the horizon, where the courthouse square opened into a small park dotted with early spring blooms. "I didn't face them alone." Her gaze dropped to the bracelet again. "If you hadn't given me this, I wouldn't be here." Thomas followed her eyes. "It wasn't the bracelet that saved you. It was your will to survive. That's what kept the signal alive." "Udo." For a moment, neither spoke. The breeze lifted her hair, and she brushed it back absently, feeling the sting where her skin was still healing. The world had sound again now. Footsteps on pavement, laughter from a passerby, the distant ringing of church bells, ordinary things that felt extraordinary after so much silence. They began to walk down the steps together. Each step was careful, deliberate. Reporters moved aside, giving them space. Someone called out her name, but she didn't look back. She reached the bottom, feeling the ground steady beneath her feet. Across the street, the marble of the courthouse reflected the sky, pale and unblemished. For the first time, it didn't look like a place of judgment. It looked like a place of truth. Her father spoke again, his tone softer now. "You know, when I first joined the bureau, I believed in facts, in evidence. I thought truth alone could fix anything. But truth means nothing without courage to speak it." Amelia's voice wavered with quiet strength. "You gave me that courage." He smiled, faint and tired, but genuine. "You already had it. I just reminded you." They walked slowly through the courtyard. The fountain at its center had begun to run again, its steady rhythm mixing with the wind. Amelia stopped near the edge, staring at the water cascading over the stone. It was clear, almost mirror-like, and when she leaned closer, she saw not the bruised, broken woman she once was, but something new, someone whole. She took the bracelet off and held it in her palm. The metal was warm from her skin, its small sensor light finally still. "This saved me," she said, "but I don't need it anymore." Thomas watched silently as she knelt and placed it at the base of the fountain. The water touched it, carrying away the last traces of dirt and blood. When she stood again, her eyes shone with quiet peace. "I used to think the worst thing was losing control," she said softly. "Now I know it's losing faith. In people, in yourself, in the idea that there's still good left somewhere." Her father rested a hand on her shoulder. "Faith isn't something you find, it's something you rebuild." She nodded. "Then I'll start rebuilding here." They continued walking until they reached the park's edge. A light drizzle began to fall, the kind that made the air smell clean. The drops touched her hair, her coat, her hands. She didn't move to cover herself. The rain didn't feel cruel anymore. It felt like renewal. They stopped under a small tree near the corner of the square. Through the branches, Amelia could see the city spreading before her, its buildings tall and stubborn, its streets alive again. Life, imperfect and persistent, went on. Thomas spoke quietly. "You know, I was afraid I'd lost you. Every hour that passed, I thought." Amelia turned to him, her voice calm. "You didn't lose me. You found me." He smiled again, his eyes soft with pride. "Maybe we both found something." She reached for his hand, squeezing gently. Maybe. The sound of the fountain faded behind them, replaced by the distant hum of the city. A few bystanders paused as they passed, some recognizing her, others only noticing the quiet grace in her walk. She no longer shrank from their eyes. She no longer carried shame. At the far end of the square, a marble plaque stood beneath an archway engraved with the words, "Justice restores the living." She paused in front of it, reading slowly, her lips forming the words like a prayer. Her father watched her, the rain softening his sharp features. "You think it's true?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Justice doesn't heal everything, but it lets you start again. You can." She looked up at the courthouse steps one last time. The doors had closed, sealing away the echoes of the past. Somewhere inside, files were being archived, evidence stored, names recorded. The story would remain there now, safe in the pages of law, no longer haunting her nights. Amelia took a deep breath and let it go. The pain, the fear, the weight of being someone else's victim, all of it drifted away with the exhale. Her father gestured toward the car waiting near the curb. "Ready to go home?" She smiled, a soft curve that reached her eyes. "Home," she repeated. "Yes, I think I finally am." They walked together, their steps steady, side by side. The drizzle turned to mist, catching the morning light until it shimmered like glass dust in the air. Behind them, the courthouse glowed faintly under the sun, its reflection rippling on the wet pavement. Amelia glanced over her shoulder one last time. The fountain still whispered, the bracelet still resting beneath the water like a secret left in trust. No one stood above the law. Not anymore. And as she stepped into the sunlight, the silence that followed was not empty. It was peace.